Thank you so much to the spirits, to Gabe, to all those that are co-creating worship this morning. It's truly a joy. So I learned that I get seasick when I was at the very beginning of a 6-week sailing trip. I knew it was possible, given that about 70 or 80% of people get seasick or motion sick. And in the open ocean, as any of you may know who are out in those waters, storms with swells sometimes as tall as buildings, it's just a thing. But the captain of our sailing ship told us reassuringly, most people adjust after a few days and stop getting seasick. I learned I was one of those very special people who did not adjust, not after a few days or many weeks. I got thoroughly seasick during our entire month and a half on the ocean. We tried various anti-nausea meds, but really it turned out that my body, or at least my inner ear, was just not having it. And so in the middle of big storms, even when I was not on watch or working, I would go above deck in my rain pants and rain jacket and rain boots and breathe the cool and fresh air, clip in my harness so I would not get washed overboard, and every so often, tidily vomit off the side of the boat. We had some big storms. We broke our bowsprit in one of them and had to make an emergency stop in the Bahamas to fix it. One of our watch officers, an experienced sailor, hurt herself pretty badly out on the bowsprit in a storm, trying to tie down a sail. The safe harbor that I found during those endless nights and days of nausea and hauling down sails in a sort of delirious, exhausted state was not a physical harbor. There was no physical harbor to be found. We only dropped anchor in actual safe harbors twice that trip. But eventually, it was a harbor of my own mind and spirit. It was pulling up from the depths of my memory the feeling of dry clothes, the comforting taste of saltines. It was the steady truth that, at least for those storms, they would pass over. That one day my feet would be on solid ground. And it was, of course, that really difficult but important discipline of training my attention on the good stuff. The stars at night, the sunrises in the morning, the particular quiet of a boat on the sea with no land in sight. It was the achievement of having gotten our boat through yet another storm safely. These steady, safe harbors in my mind were what allowed me to embrace being on a boat for 6 weeks and being seasick, and not just be totally overwhelmed by being on a boat for 6 weeks and being seasick. Doctors Emily and Amelia Nagoski have a book called Burnout. You might be familiar with it. It's about actually a lot more than burnout, but they use the language of stress and stressors. They talk about stress as what happens to our bodies: increased cortisol levels, shortened breath, tense muscles, stomach aches, high blood pressure. And they talk about the stressors: patriarchy, white supremacy, colonialism, climate change, pandemic, ableism, living paycheck to paycheck, or not having a paycheck at all. And they believe in doing something about both the stress and the stressors. That we don't need to wait to solve all of our stress until we have the perfect therapist and the perfect self-care routine and the perfect meditation practice to do something about the big stressors. But that we also can't wait until we transform the big stressors to do something about our stress. On the boat, it was pretty simple. I wasn't getting off the boat for 6 weeks. The big stressors would not change. So what was I going to do about my stress? I could be seasick on a boat and be miserable, or I could be seasick on a boat and try maybe just a little bit to change my experience of it. We heard the spirits do a wonderful version of the Wailing Jenny's song, Storm Comin'. Don't run from the coming storm, because it can't keep a storm from coming. There are many storms for many of us right now. Storms of life, elder care and kiddo care and self-care, life transitions and decisions, economic pressures, the gift, but also what can be the grind of community and taking care of one another, the violence of oppressions that are part of each day. And as you all well know, the very real storms of our earth. And even as we try to create a world with fewer of these storms, we are still living in this one. And there will be times when it feels like there is no safe harbor on the horizon. And we have to figure out if we can dig down and create it within us, around us, between us, while the wind and the rain rage all around. Attachment theory, which perhaps the therapists and psychologists in the congregation can share more about later, talks about the human needs for what they call safe havens and secure bases. A simplified way of explaining this is that as humans, we need people to accept us as who we are, a safe haven, and people who support us as we explore who we are trying to become, a secure base. A safe haven provides comfort and safety in the face of fear, and a secure base is a steady, secure place from which to explore the world. In this theory, which is only as helpful to you as it is helpful to you, so take what is helpful and leave the rest. Some people might be a safe haven, and others might be a secure base, and some might be both, and sometimes it changes in different chapters of our lives. When I first heard about this theory, I thought of so many amazing friends and how clear it was to me that some were my safe havens, people I could vent to unfiltered, who have my back no matter what. And some are my secure bases, challenging me, supporting me to take risks, to have adventures. And so many are both. I'd invite you to take a moment and maybe think of a safe haven or a secure base in your life. Could be a friend, a family member, a therapist, a coworker, a spiritual companion, a member of this community, a pet. We're so grateful for whoever could be that safe haven or that secure base. Many of us know the pain of looking for a safe haven or a secure base and not finding it, but also the power of learning to ask the question, in this moment, what do I need? Do I need someone to accept me just as I am, or invite me to growth and seeking out that heaven or that base? I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota, part of why I say I'm a Midwesterner at heart. And so I had to cheer very hard for Suni Lee, the Hmong gymnastics superstar of the past Olympics. You might remember watching her unleash her skills on the uneven bars and the floor and the vault, winning 3 medals. I noticed while I was watching her that she would often place her hand on her stomach right before she performed and take a big breath. I love that she didn't hide this, that she on TV in front of who knows how many millions of people, she would gently place her hand on her center of gravity. And then she would take off into the air and totally defy human gymnastics possibilities and limitations. She reminded me of the ways that we can create our own moments of safe haven and secure base when we need them. That we can find a place of steadiness within, or our own anchor amidst a storm. She reminded me of the simple things that I know, but I still forget to do in moments of stress. Of how humming or singing can support us in moving from flight or fight or freeze into rest. How 3 deep breaths can really shift how I feel about a storm I might be in the middle of. How a warm cup of tea or a cold glass of water or a song or the smell of an herb or a piece of citrus or feeling a breeze or sun on my face. These things that shift our senses can also shift our sense of things. How hard laughter or cathartic crying or getting my heart rate up, even for just a minute, can really reset. Doctors Emily and Amelia Nagoski talk about how we as humans evolved to need to complete what they name as the stress cycle, to physically move through an experience of stress and complete it, letting our body know we're safe. They talk, as many others do, about humans having evolved, needing to run from threats that might be chasing us, and how our bodies need to know that that threat is no longer there. When we're running from something that might be chasing us and our blood is pumping and our heart rate is up, we get to, in their language, complete the stress cycle. But when we're in a work meeting with a coworker who uses a racial slur, or our boss is listening to all of the men but not the women, or when it feels like housework is not being shared fairly, or any of those stressors that happen throughout our days, we can get stuck. And there's no running from the threat. There's no way to remind our body that now we're safe. There's just our hearts racing like we're being chased, but we're trying to stay very calm and composed on the outside. And so we carry the stuck stress with us. And there's a lot of reasons that our stress can get stuck, because it just keeps coming. Chronic stress that never stops, that's part of systems of oppression. And the Nagoski sisters offer that physical activity, breathing, laughter, affection, crying, creative expression, slowly tensing our muscles and relaxing them, can all help complete the stress cycle and help our bodies remember that we're on the other side. These are all things that we can carry with us, possible tools for creating our own safe harbor and anchor in the storms of the world. I love the hymn, "The Storm is Passing Over," that Keith read an excerpt from, and we'll hear the full hymn later. It has language that might be not our same language of the divine. It has some Christian language, but I would invite us to hear it and translate it as makes sense to us. And I listen to it sort of as a prayer, a hope, even though I don't always know that the storm is passing over. So many storms are more likely here to stay. But what I do believe in is that opening line, Take courage, my soul, and let us journey on. That the way forward is to find those safe harbors and havens and secure bases within us and within our people. What I do believe in is that the morning light does appear. It appears faded by forest fires and blurred by pandemics and forever changed by the many storms of our world and our lives, but it's there each day. After Hurricane Ida, from her evacuation location in Georgia, New Orleans native and Unitarian Universalist minister, the Reverend Sarah Green, preached a sermon on a list of things she knew for sure. One of them was about how seeds planted grow. She talked about planting radishes and lettuces early in the year and totally forgetting about where she had even planted them in the rush of life, and then found them amongst the weeds months later, still growing. Even as we can create harbors within ourselves, I love remembering that we get to live in a world where seeds do grow, that there still may be a moment of safe harbor that surprises us and offers us its comfort when we most need it. We can put our hand on our stomach like Olympic gold medalist Suni Lee. We can imagine our dry feet and our saltines like seasick Elizabeth. We can walk with the wind like Representative John Lewis. We can find the harbor and the haven within. From that anchor comes all possibilities of gold medals and ships sailed and storms weathered. Amen, and may it be so.